Welcome to the global news on September 30th in 2021. And today we start in Washington in the United States. The former US president is said to have violent tantrums again and again. Donald Trump's ex-spokeswoman now reports that an employee then calmed him down with music, especially with a certain piece. A music man to reassure the president or to appease him? The former spokeswoman for ex-US President Donald Trump, Stephanie Grisham, talks about internals from her time in the White House in a new disclosure book. According to preliminary reports in the US media on Tuesday, she describes that a White House employee was commissioned to play soothing music to Trump during outbursts of anger. The employer, named Music Man by his colleagues, had, among other things, bet on Memory from the successful musical Cats. Well, I like the song, but seriously? According to the book, I'll Take Your Question Now, Trump repeatedly had terrifying outbursts of anger. He kept shouting at the then White House legal advisor Pat Cipollone for repeatedly rejecting Trump's requests as unethical or illegal. Elsewhere, Grisham writes that Trump once summoned her to his Air Force One presidential jet to counter statements by porn actress Stormy Daniels that his penis was shaped like a mushroom. She replied, okay, sir, writes Grisham, according to the New York Times. In any case, Trump's ego was always a problem. For example, during a mysterious hospital visit in 2019, Grisham wrote that he only underwent a very common procedure, suggesting that it was a colonoscopy. Trump refused anesthesia because he would then have to temporarily relinquish his powers to his deputy Mike Pence. Trump was of the opinion that this was a sign of weakness. Trump has had the descriptions in the book, which goes on the sale next week, completely rejected. Grisham is a disgruntled former employee. Her book is full of falsehoods. Yeah, like the election. Grisham was Trump's White House spokeswoman for less than a year. Among other things, she caused a stir because she did not lead a single press conference. After serving as Trump spokeswoman, she became First Lady Melania's press secretary and chief of staff. In her book, she provides an explanation of why she never gave a press briefing in the White House. I knew that sooner or later the president would ask me to tell the public something that is not true or that would make me sound like crazy. And there I really understand that woman. But let's go to Warsaw in Poland. Poland's President Andrzej Duda said on Tuesday he would request the extension of a state of emergency along Poland's border with Belarus for a further 60 days due to a surge in migration that Warsaw blames on Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Poland and fellow European states Lithuania and Latvia have reported sharp increases in migrants from countries such as Afghanistan and Iraq trying to cross their borders in what Brussels and Warsaw say is a form of hybrid warfare designed to put pressure on the Union over sanctions it imposed on Minsk. As we can see, this problem on the border is still there, and we still need to do everything we can to prevent it. I believe that introducing the state of emergency for 60 days is justified, Duda told a news conference. A state of emergency involves restrictions on freedom of movement in the affected areas, including for the media and non-governmental organizations. The current measures are due to expire on October 1st. Early on Tuesday, the Polish government said it would ask the president to extend the state of emergency in line with the constitution. Parliament must grant the final approval once it gets the green light from the president. Poland declared the emergency at the start of September, but its nationalist government has faced criticism from human rights campaigners over its treatment of migrants at the frontier. On Monday, Polish Interior Minister Mariusz Kamiński said material related to Islamist extremism had been found on the phones of migrants crossing its borders. Poland's opposition and human rights groups have accused the ruling right-wing PiS party in the past of stoking prejudice against immigrants for political gain. During Europe's 2015 migrant crisis, PiS leader Jarosław Kaczynski said refugees from the Middle East could bring disease and parasites to Poland. Oh yeah. But now let's go to Berlin in Germany. Conservative Chancellor candidate Armin Laschet won some time in a fight for his political future on Tuesday, as lawmakers in his CDU-CSU alliance met to decide what to do after suffering their first national election defeat since 2002. The center-left Social Democrats narrowly beat the Conservatives in Sunday's election, leaving Laschet to try to form a ruling coalition with the Greens and the Free Democrats, that's the Liberals here, or else see his political career collapse. He faces an uphill battle. The Social Democrats, Germany's oldest party, won 25.7% of the vote in Sunday's election, ahead of the 24.1% for the CDU-CSU, the Conservative Union, and their worst federal result in history. Several senior party members have signaled that Laschet's days may be numbered, and before the crunch meeting of CDU-CSU lawmakers, Conservative Economy Minister Peter Altmaier called for a swift realignment in terms of personnel and content. Well, you should listen to that. He was one of the reasons. Laschet faced some harsh criticism at the meeting. It was a factual discussion with a wide range of views. There was certainly some disappointment. Some things just have to be said openly, said Ralf Brinkhaus, who was reappointed head of the CDU-CSU parliamentary group for 6 months. And he said, but in the end there was solidarity in a crisis and there was an overriding will to look forwards. In this he was brushing off questions about Laschet's longer-term future. In a show of support, Brinkhaus said Laschet should be involved in any exploratory talks on the coalition, but stressed that while the Conservatives were open to talks, for now it was up to the Greens and the Liberals to decide which way to go. And of course Laschet is still party leader, so he has a part there. Laschet, whose fortunes began to slide in July when he was caught on camera laughing on a visit to a flood-stricken town, got the go-ahead on Monday from his Christian Democrats to explore a possible coalition with the Greens and the Liberals. Markus Söder, leader of the Christian Social Union, the CSU, the Bavarian sister party of the CDU, also took a swipe at Laschet earlier, saying there was only a small possibility the Social Democrats would not manage to form a government. At the moment, Olaf Scholz clearly has the best chances of being chancellor, Söder said about the SPD's candidate to succeed Angela Merkel, who plans to step down after 16 years in power. She didn't run for parliament again. Laschet only secured the Conservative Chancellor candidacy in April after a public contest with Söder. A survey by pollster Civi for the Augsburger Allgemeine newspaper showed that 71% of the Germans think it is wrong for Laschet to lay claim to the chancellery, although we had an election, surveys don't matter now. One CDU lawmaker, speaking on condition of anonymity, said that if Laschet could not pull off a coalition with the Greens and the Liberals, he should go. The Social Democrats hope to talk to the same two parties this week about forming a three-way government, but it's more likely to be next week, I guess. And now let's go to Brussels in Belgium. The EU Commission would like to know from all relevant partners from industry, research, administration and associations how energy-intensive industries can cope with the ecological and digital transition and at the same time increase their resilience. To this end, they launched a consultation on Tuesday. A jointly agreed transition plan should be available by the beginning of 2022 at the latest. The consultation will last 8 weeks. And now let's go to Khartoum in Sudan. 5 members of the Sudanese General Intelligence Service were killed and a 6th was injured on Tuesday in a raid that targeted a cell linked to the militant Islamic State group in Khartoum, the service said in a statement. 11 suspects of different nationalities were arrested in the raid, which targeted several locations in the south of the capital, it said, describing them as foreign terrorists. A group of the cell opened fire on the intelligence service force in one location and killed 5 of its members, including 2 officers, and injured 1 officer, the statement added. The group of 4 foreign terrorists have escaped, and they are being hunted down to be arrested, the statement said. The cabinet confirmed the incident and pledged to provide support to the security services to help them carry out their duties. No further details were revealed, though, on the militant group or the nationalities of its members. And now let's go to Sydney in Australia. Australia's federal government will wind down emergency funding for people who lost work during COVID-19 shutdowns as vaccination rates increase across the country, putting pressure on state and territory leaders to keep their economies open. The decision to cut off federal support when inoculating levels reach 80% means individual states and territories would have to foot the bill if they decide to go into lockdown in response to any fresh outbreaks of the coronavirus. This emergency payment needs to come to an end, Frydenberg told 7 News on Wednesday. If you look around the world, people are starting to get about their normal lives, learning to live with the virus in a COVID-safe way. Australia's 2 biggest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, along with its capital Canberra, have been in lockdown for several weeks as the country grapples with a Delta variant-fueled 3rd wave of the virus. The shutdown have put Australia's $2 trillion Australian dollar economy on the brink of a second recession in as many years. In other virus-free parts of the country, state and territory leaders who have the power to close their borders under Australia's federal system of government have done just that, hoping to avoid importing infections from the hotspots. The federal government, which has spent more than 9 billion Australian dollars since June to support around 2 million people, wants all internal borders reopened when the 80% vaccination threshold is reached nationally, expected in November. However, despite the creation of a national cabinet to form a cohesive response to the pandemic, some state leaders have indicated they may not follow that national plan. Frydenberg said federal income support payments will begin to be phased out when a state reaches 70% vaccination. At that level, affected workers must reapply each week to confirm their eligibility. Payments will stop 2 weeks after the 80% target is met. That means that New South Wales, the most populous state and one of the epicenters of the current outbreak, would lose payments within weeks. Around 62% of people in the state have been vaccinated, above a national average of 53%. Queensland and Western Australia, which are currently not receiving any federal income support, have the lowest vaccination rates in the country, with both states not expected to reach 80% until mid-December. New South Wales state, where Sydney is the capital, reported 863 new infections on Wednesday, level with a day earlier, and 15 new deaths. State Premier Gladys Berejiklian said hospitalization rates at the current phase in the outbreak were lower than they expected as first-dose vaccinations topped 86%. We are tracking under what we envisaged we would, but there's no time for complacency, Berejiklian said. Victoria State, meanwhile, reported a record number of new infections for a second consecutive day with 950 cases and 7 deaths. Total cases in Australia stood at around 103,000, including 1,278 deaths. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.